Welcome back everyone. Today we're going to be making a minimalist fanny pack. And this is a simple design, but it packs a lot of features. There's going to be multiple pockets with pocket dividers. We're making an extra strap so you can tuck away the flaps and wear this like a shoulder bag or a crossbody bag. It's really a fun design and easy to make. So if you are new to sewing, you should have no problem following the step-by-step tutorial. With all that being said, if you are new to the channel, grab that printable pattern and let's get started. Getting started with supplies, you'll need a half yard for your main fabric, and I recommend using canvas, denim, twill. These are all heavy duty fabrics that are very easy to work with. I'm gonna be using a vinyl for my main fabric. It's on the thinner side and very flexible, so it's more aligned with the fabrics I mentioned. But like always, get creative with it, use different fabrics, test different fabrics, find something that's gonna work for you. You'll need a half yard for your secondary fabric, and this is gonna be your lining. I recommend using a lighter weight fabric because once you get all these layers together, it can get pretty bulky. So finding a lighter weight fabric will really help bring this project all together. You'll need two zippers, one 9-inch and one 11¼ inches. I'm gonna be using a zipper roll. This is a great way to go because you can cut the exact measurements you need without making any waste. You'll need two different types of webbing if you choose to make the extra strap. For the main bag, you'll need 2 yards of 1 to 1¼ inch width. Going along with the main bag webbing, you'll need one buckle, and you want this buckle to match the width of your webbing. So if you're using a 1¼ inch webbing, you want to use a 1¼ inch buckle. You'll need 2 yards of a 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch width webbing. Going along with the 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch width webbing, you'll need one strap slider and 2 lobster clasps. You also want these to match the width of your webbing, and these are optional. So if you're not making the extra strap, you don't need these. We'll get more into this once we start making the bag. You'll need 3 to 4 eyelets, and you want these eyelets to be big enough that you can clip your clasp through. I'm using 5/16 eyelets. I found this was a great size and it works with a lot of different style of clasps. Lastly, you'll need your pattern. The pattern is available at properfitclothing.com. It's super easy to use. All you have to do is print it, cut it out, tape it together, and you're ready to go. Before you tape it together, the best thing to do is to cut the top and one of the side edges. This is gonna allow you to overlap the pages for a perfectly aligned pattern. Once you have all your supplies gathered and your pattern printed out, it's time to move into cutting. And after taping your pattern together, it should look like this. For the best results, I recommend checking your printer alignment, and once you have it all taped together, we're gonna cut on the outside of the black line. After cutting, you should end up with one main side panel cut out of your main fabric, 4 side strap panels, 2 out of your main fabric and 2 out of your secondary fabric. 2 back strap pocket panels, 1 out of your main fabric and 1 out of your secondary fabric. 1 main back panel cut out of your main fabric. 1 inside back pocket divider panel cut out of your secondary fabric. 1 main front lining panel cut out of your secondary fabric. 2 front main panels, 1 cut out of your main fabric and 1 cut out of your secondary fabric. With all the panels cut and organized, I like to take this project on in sections, and then we bring all those sections together at the end to complete the fanny pack. For the first section, we're going to sew together the side strap panels. You should have 2 out of your main fabric and 2 out of your secondary fabric. Grab 1 of each and place the right sides together. From here, we're going to stitch the outside edge at a 1/4 inch seam allowance, leaving the curved edge unstitched. Repeat this process for both of your side strap panels. After finishing, we're going to flip the right sides out. And I like to use a screwdriver or a pair of scissors to really poke out those corners and make them look nice. With the right sides out and the corners looking nice, we're going to make sure the edges are lined up and add a top stitch around the outside edge. To get a really nice professional top stitch, I recommend using an edge presser foot or something similar to it that has an edge. This will give you the ability to butt it up against a seam or an edge to get a perfectly straight top stitch. The one I'm using is adjustable, and technically it's used for a different kind of stitch, but I found it works perfectly for top stitching. As long as you can line it up against the edge and sew, you should be good to go. And go ahead and repeat this top stitch for both of the side strap panels. And another quick tip is matching the thread to the color of your fabric. It can really hide any imperfections and make your project look really nice. Next, we're going to be sewing the strap on, so grab your 1 inch to a 1¼ inch webbing. I'll be using a 1¼ inch webbing for this project. Cut 2 1-yard strips. It's best to start on the bigger side, and then you can trim this down to your measurements later. Grab both of your side strap panels and place the webbing on top, lining it up in the center of the panel. Make sure the webbing end is sticking over the curved side of the panel just a little bit. If you're unsure of the alignment, you can grab the pattern piece and double check to make sure you have it centered correctly in the panel. Before we move on, I just want to show you real quick, if you are using 1-inch webbing, the alignment will still be in the center of the panel, and it's really not that big of a difference. You can actually even go bigger than 1¼ inch. It's totally up to you and the size webbing you want to use. Anyways, getting back to the project, we're going to do a box stitch around the outside edge. I am using the edge presser foot again for this step, because you want to be as close to that edge as possible, and you also want to make it look really neat. Thread tends to show up really easy on webbing, so any little mistake is very noticeable. And we just did a box stitch around the outside edge. Feel free to add more bar tacks on the inside of that box or an X. Any extra stitches will add more strength and durability to that side strap panel. And real quick before we move on to the next step, we're not going to add the buckle just yet. It tends to get in the way when it comes to sewing the rest of the panels together. Other than that, our side strap panels are complete, so we can place them off to the side and grab our back strap pocket panel. You should have one cut out of your main fabric and one cut out of your lining fabric. What we're going to do is place the right sides together and stitch the side edges at a 1/4 inch seam allowance, leaving the top and bottom unstitched. After completing the stitch, make sure the panels are still lined up, and we're going to flip the right sides out. Just like the side strap panel, we're going to line up the side edges and add a top stitch. And depending on what type of fabric you're using, adding a top stitch like this will really help flatten out that side seam and make for a real nice looking end product. With the back strap pocket panel complete, we can place it off to the side and grab our inside pocket divider panel. Locate the hem guides at the top of the pattern, and this is where we're going to fold that edge over twice to clean up that raw edge. If it's easier, you can chalk out the guide onto the pattern, or just fold it over twice until you hit the top of the curve on the sides. Place a few pins to secure it down and stitch directly on top of your folded hem. Feel free to add 1 or 2 stitches for decoration purposes. Place this panel off to the side, grab your main back panel, flip the main back panel so the wrong side is facing up. Place the inside back pocket divider panel on top with wrong sides together. Line the panel up on the bottom edge, and we're going to stitch as close as we can to the outside edge. The main goal is to turn these panels into one panel to make it easier to assemble in future steps. And real quick before we move on, you can easily adjust the height of the divider simply by adjusting the depth of the len. But for now, we're done with these panels, so you can place them off to the side and grab your main front lining panel. On the pattern, you're going to see 4 pleat guides. They're going to be located near the corners. We want to mark these pleats on our fabric, but before we do that, I like to cut them out. It makes it a lot easier when it comes to chalking them out. With the pleated areas cut out, we're going to lay it on the right side of our fabric and chalk out all of the pleat guides. Try to make these marks as accurate as possible, because when it comes to the circumference of this panel, we want it to be exact to match up with our other panels. With all of the guides marked, we're going to pull the pleats together, lining up both of the chalked lines on either side of the pleat. I also like to place a marking on the wrong side of the fabric so I know exactly where to stitch to. Feel free to just use the pattern and mark the entire pleat guide out. But getting back to the pleat, we're going to pull the pleat together and add a pin. Repeat this process for all 4 of the pleats and double check to make sure each pleat is exactly the same, or as similar as possible. From here, we're going to stitch directly on top of that chalked out pleat guide. If done correctly, the right sides of the fabric should be pulled together and you should be stitching on the wrong side of the fabric. After finishing, double check all the pleats, make sure the tack stitch is nice and solid and it's not unraveling. Lay the panel down with wrong sides facing up, grab the pattern, locate the pleat fold direction guides, and fold the pleats in the direction of the guide. It's fairly simple. All you have to do is fold the pleat towards the center of the panel and add a pin. Repeat this process for all of the pleats, and once you have them pinned down, we're going to stitch the outside edge directly on top of the pleat as close as we can to that edge. After stitching all the pleat guides down, we're going to flip the right sides out and just double check to make sure all those pleats are popping out the same distance. If it's looking good, we're going to place this panel off to the side and grab our front main panel. You should have 1 cut out of your main fabric and 1 cut out of your secondary fabric. We're going to start by doing the same thing for this fabric. Locate the pleat guides, cut them out, and chalk them on both your main fabric and your secondary fabric. The same goes for this fabric. It's best to mark both sides, pull the pleats together, add a few pins, and stitch each pleat directly on top of the chalked out pleat guide. After completing each stitch, we're going to double check both the main fabric and the secondary fabric and make sure they match up. If everything's looking good, we're going to fold these pleats in opposite directions. So the main fabric, we're going to fold towards the inside, and the secondary fabric, we're going to fold towards the outside. And the reason we're doing this is that so when we place the panels together, we're going to reduce a lot of the bulk in those pleat section areas. This will make it easier to attach the side panels and also double-sided bias tape at the end. So just like in the previous step, we're going to stitch as close as we can to the outside edge for both of the panels. When you have the pleats tacked down in the correct direction, we're going to place the wrong sides together and double check that bottom edge to make sure it's nice and flat. From here, we're going to grab the pattern once again, locate the top zipper edge, grab one of your zippers, and the zipper should be the exact length as your top zipper edge. Place the zipper on the main fabric with right sides together, grab the secondary fabric, and place it on the opposite side of the zipper. The right side of the secondary fabric should be on the wrong side of the zipper. And stitch that zipper edge at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. With the zipper stitched to both of the panels, we're going to flip the wrong sides together, flatten out the zipper edge so both of the panels line up, and add a top stitch. This seam is very exposed, so you're going to want to make it as neat as possible. Grab the pattern one more time, locate the pleat guides at the top of the panel. These ones can look a little bit tricky, so we're going to flip the right sides together. Pull the secondary fabric and main fabric down so it makes a right edge, sandwiching that zipper in between. Make sure you have about a 1/4 inch of zipper sticking out past both of the panels and place a pin. Before we do the opposite side, if you're using a zipper roll, you're going to want to add your zipper train at this point. Move the zipper train towards the center of the zipper and finish off the final pleat. Place a pin and we're going to stitch directly on top of our pleat guide over the zipper. Just go slow over the zipper and you should be fine. When you're done, flip the wrong sides together and pop out those pleats. If done correctly, the pleats should have the same depth. Before we move on, I like to do a quick once over to make sure all the pleats are looking good. Next, we're going to grab the front main panel, the one that we just completed, and the main front lining panel. Flip the front main panel right sides down and place the right side of the main front lining panel to the wrong side of the front main panel. Line up both of the panels using the center guide, and we're going to stitch around the outside edge as close as we can to that edge. This is another step where we're just attaching these panels to essentially form them into one panel. And as you can see, this is essentially the divider in the center of the bag to create the pocket. Place this panel off to the side and grab your main side panel. Going along with the panel, you'll need your 11 1/4 inch zipper. Slide the zipper train on and move it towards the center of the zipper. Next, we're going to place the right side of the zipper to the right side of the main side panel. Place a pin and do the same thing for the opposite side of the zipper and the side panel. As you can see, the zipper is shorter, so you'll have to pull it. Once you have both sides pinned down, we're going to stitch at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Cautious sewing over the zipper track. And what we want to do next is clean up those raw edges. We don't want those edges exposed on the inside of the bag, so it's best just to clean it up. A quick and easy way to do that is using pre-made double fold bias tape. With this technique, you don't need any extra attachments. All you need is the bias tape and you're ready to go. I will be showing a more advanced technique later on in the video. But for now, I'm going to use the pre-made bias tape and sandwich it in between that zipper edge. Trim the bias tape so it sticks past the edges of the zipper. Repeat the process for the opposite side of the zipper and stitch it down on the inside of our first stitch. Trim the bias tape flush with the zipper edge. And there you go, your raw edge is taken care of. Next, we're going to move the bias taped seam allowance down towards the main side panel and add a top stitch directly on top of that bias tape. After top stitching, move this panel off to the side and grab your complete main back panel and your complete side strap panel. We're going to line up the curved edges of our main back panel to the curved edges of our side strap panels. Roll up and pin the webbing so it's out of the way, and make sure the wrong side of the strap panel is to the right side of the main back panel. Repeat this process for both of the strap panels, lining up the webbing in the center of the main back panel. Once you have the panels lined up, pin everything together and we're going to stitch both of the side edges as close as we can to the edge. Once you finish the stitch, we're going to grab the complete back strap pocket panel, place the wrong side of the pocket panel to the right side of the main back panel, stitch the top and bottom edge as close as you can to that outside edge. As you can see, this creates a nice little pocket for the side straps to tuck into. For the next step, keep the straps tucked in, grab your complete main side panel, locate the center on the main side panel, the zipper, and also the main back panel. Place the right side of the main side panel to the right side of the main back panel, lining up the centers and making sure the zipper is at the top edge of the main back panel. Pin everything down and we're going to stitch all the way around the outside edge at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. If everything is done right, the circumference of the main side panel should match exactly to the circumference of the main back panel. Double check to make sure all the layers got stitched together. If everything's looking good, grab the complete front main panel. And we're going to do the same thing. Mark the centers on the main side panel and our front main panel. Line up the centers with right sides together, place a few pins. I like to double check before I start sewing to make sure it's perfectly lined up. And from here, we're going to stitch all the way around that outside edge at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. This stitch can be pretty tricky. You have limited room to work with and you want to keep that seam allowance consistent throughout the stitch. So just take your time and go as slow as you need to. After finishing, double check to make sure all the panels are centered and all the layers got stitched together. Before we flip the right sides out, I'm going to run you through a few different techniques on cleaning up these raw edges on the inside of the bag. The first method is using a bias tape making kit. In this technique, you make your own double-sided bias tape to the size and fabric you want to use. All you do is cut your strips, feed it through your folder, and press it when it comes out the folder. It's very easy to do, and you get to customize the bias tape to your exact measurements. The second technique is using a double fold bias tape binder. This is the most efficient technique. You cut your strips, feed it through your binder, and sew it directly to your raw edge. The last technique is using pre-made double fold bias tape like we did in the previous steps. You are limited to colors, but it's very easy to use. You fold it over the edge and stitch it down. I'm going to be using the double fold bias tape attachment. If you plan on making a lot of bags, I highly recommend looking into this. It gives the nicest end product and cuts down production time. But like always, use whatever method that works best for you. From here, we're going to open up the zipper and pull the right sides out. Do a quick once over, look at all the seams, make sure everything is looking good and even. Pull both of your side strap panels out of the pocket panel. Unpin the webbing. Grab the buckle that matches the width of your webbing. Before we slide the buckle onto the webbing, we're going to make 2 strap holders. And these are 2 small strips of webbing that are sewn together to create a loop. You want the loop to be the same size as the width of the webbing. We're going to first slide these onto each end of our webbing. And what these will do is act as loops to hold the excess webbing that goes through the buckle. With the loops on, find one of the webbing ends, grab your buckle and slide the webbing through the inside opening and back out through the outside opening. From here, we're going to roll the webbing end over twice to hide that raw edge. Place a pin in the webbing, unclip the buckle, and feed the opposite end of the webbing through the opposite side of the buckle. Roll the webbing end over twice, place a pin, and tack stitch both of those webbing ends down. Feel free to add a box stitch, an X stitch, or even more bar tacks. And just like that, your buckle is added to the bag. You can try it on and see how everything fits. Slide the webbing ends through the loops to keep the excess webbing out of the way, or feel free to trim the webbing down to customize it to your exact measurements. For the final step, place the side straps in the back pocket. This step is optional. We're going to be adding eyelets on the back pocket panel. Depending on the size of your clasps, you'll want to use big enough eyelets. I'll be using 5/16. I found this was a great size for most clasps. What we're going to be doing is placing these eyelets in the corners of the back pocket panel as close as we can to that corner. And feel free just to add 2 or 3. After marking the placement of the eyelets, cut a hole for the eyelet. Depending on the kit you have, you can either punch the hole or cut it with scissors. Place the eyelet through the hole. I'm using double-sided eyelets that come with a flat back piece. If you have this piece, place it on the back of the eyelet. I'll be using a standard hammer die to install the eyelets. These typically come with the eyelet kits and they're very easy to use. Place it in the back of the eyelet and hammer it down. After hammering, your eyelet should be fully secured down, and repeat this process for your opposite corners. I'm only going to be adding 3 eyelets, 2 on the zipper side and 1 on the side opposite of the zipper. With all of the eyelets secured down, you can place the bag off to the side and grab your 3/4 inch to 1 inch webbing. We want the strap to be more like a purse strap, so that's why we chose a smaller width. Cut a 2-yard strip out of your webbing, and you can adjust this later. I would start with 2 yards and work your way down. Next, grab 2 of your lobster clasps and your strap slider. These should all match the width of your webbing. Start by sliding the strap adjuster onto either side of the webbing. Move it down the webbing about 1 to 2 feet. Grab one clasp and slide it on the same end. Pull a little bit of slack out the top of the strap slider. Grab the webbing end, slide it through the opposite side of the strap adjuster from the far opening to the near opening. Pull the end out about 4 inches. Fold the end over once and attach it back to the side going through the opposite opening. Place a pin and add a bar tack stitch. This will allow you to adjust the strap using only the slider. Move to the opposite webbing end, grab your last clasp. Feed the webbing through the opening, roll the webbing over once, and add a bar tack stitch. After stitching, this will complete your second strap. So from here, we're going to find the bag and clip the strap to the eyelets. And by adding the extra eyelets, you can actually make a few different configurations with this strap. The first one is a standard shoulder bag style, and the second one is more of a crossbody bag style. Or you could even do it just through one and have a shorter arm loop style strap. If you want to make it more fancy, you can get a chain strap with clasp ends, clip it through your eyelets, and this will give you a whole different dynamic to your bag. The chain straps can't be adjusted, but you can buy them in different lengths. And the final step is adding your branding. I like to throw it on the zipper pulls and other areas you can clip things to. And there you have it, your fanny pack is complete. Thank you so much for watching and supporting the channel. I love making designs like this where you can actually utilize the bag in multiple ways, and having the option to change out the strap, put different straps on, really brings out fresh new looks with different outfits. But anyways, if you do make this and you really like how it looks, tag me on Instagram. I would love to see it. But other than that, I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm gonna keep the videos coming at you, so I'll see you next time.